Students, this is Thomas Jefferson again. Your teacher has asked me to explain the idea of transformation and attribution in these so-called digital stories you are creating. First, remember that real property, such as a horse or my house in Monticello, is not the same thing as intellectual property such as the stories you write or the images you download from Google. Whatever Google is, the difference is that we give the creators of intellectual property certain limited rights, not simply because they have a moral right to their property, but as an incentive for them to create more intellectual property and share it for the betterment of our culture. We have to balance the incentives to create intellectual property with losses to society that such incentives to ownership may cause. Therefore, if you can't make your digital stories, then maybe there is a loss that outweighs the incentives given to the creators of the images you are using. That's why you can use the intellectual property of others, so you can create new content that will further our culture. Therefore, we use the term transformative to evaluate whether you have used intellectual property in an appropriate way. Therefore, you have to transform the original piece of intellectual property into something, a new and different form of intellectual property. Unfortunately, in my past lectures, I didn't explain the concept of transformation very clearly. It is often a very difficult idea to understand because we don't always know what is transformative and what is not. The reason is that it can be difficult to tell the difference because people see originality in different ways. What may seem original to one person may not be original to others. It is not enough to simply change the structure, say changing one color to another, to make the new work transformative. So we have to think of different ways of doing things. One way is to make sure your work has social benefit. I'm sure your teacher thinks that creating a digital story is beneficial to your education, so that may be one factor in deciding that your use of intellectual property is transformative. Another factor may be that you are using the intellectual property for a different purpose than did the creator of the intellectual property you are using. You are trying to use these images or music to tell your own story, which is much different than was the purpose of the original creator of that piece of intellectual property. Finally, the most important reason may be that your work is creative. Downloading a piece of music just to listen to you write a story, find some images, and mix them together in new ways that tell your own personal story. It's your story, nobody else's. Therefore, I'm sure it will be very creative. However, this opportunity to use intellectual property does not mean that its creators have no moral rights. Therefore,